On Saturday, August the 9th, 18-year-old Michael Brown was shot and killed in the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson, Missouri. Now, since that day, riots and protests have raged on the streets of that Midwestern city. And so tonight, we have put together a studio audience of legal, law enforcement, and civil rights leaders to weigh in on all of these issues impacting Ferguson and the United States as a whole. But, by the way, we're not going to just argue and debate. We will do some of that over the course of the next hour, but hopefully we'll offer up solutions on how we could bridge this racial divide that exists in our great country. And with that, let me bring in our distinguished studio audience. Good to see everybody. Thank you all for being here. Let me start with this. Dorian Johnson was with Michael Brown, and he was the first person that I saw explain what happened. And he said, we're just walking along, minding our own business, and then they shot him in the back. And not only that, we didn't do anything. And he had his hands up, and they executed him. I heard that, and I heard two other witnesses. How many of you agree with me, when you heard that first description, how many of you thought, oh my goodness, they shot this kid in cold blood? That's what I thought. Raise your hand. How many of you thought that? Deneen, you didn't think that right away when you heard that?
I didn't, because one thing I've learned in being in the media, Sean, is that you have to get all of the facts. You had too many people who were weighing in on predetermined decisions and judgments when we didn't know anything about what happened other than the fact that this individual was shot and killed.
I learned that in the Richard Jewell case. Alvita, you remember in Atlanta, the Olympic bombing, and they said he was a hero, and then the Atlanta Journal-Constitution came out. He fits the profile of a lone bomber because he lived with his mother. I was on the air that day, and I said, that doesn't mean he did anything. And he was listening that day, and I didn't find out till later, and he gave me a call and said, you were the only one that defended me. I learned not to rush to judgment.
Absolutely.
Now we've got two diametrically opposed versions of what happened that night. Things have changed dramatically. I would argue even in favor of the police officer and his story, Darren Wilson. Now we hear that, well, we know about the robbery at the convenience store, which I think is important, and we'll debate that. But we also know that we have witnesses that are saying that Michael Brown bum-rushed the police officer twice, once in the car, and that's where the first shot went off, inside the car. And then after he ran, he might have put his hands up, but then he charged at the officer, and that would then change the entire legal definition of what happened that night. Yes?
You will find, as being a former NYPD detective, that the initial stories are normally false, and sometimes it's like a bad game of telephone. And what happens over time, and when a grand jury is impaneled, and when the FBI is now interviewing people under penalty of perjury, federal perjury, you'll see the stories change. And to believe a co-conspirator in a forcible robbery is unbelievable to me.
But it was pretty compelling to me, because it was not only Dorian Johnson, it was two other people that said the exact same thing. So I was thinking, three eyewitnesses, wow.
It's talk on the street.
Now my next question.